It's not about religion, it's about humanity. And so when it's about humanity, then it doesn't matter what religion you are and how you pray to God.
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward.
for inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up, tell you a little bit of why we were out of pocket last week, and then we're going to talk about the horrifying events that came out of Minneapolis, Minnesota this last weekend. Then finally, Missy and I sat down with Ani Zonneveld, who is the founder and executive director of Muslims for Progressive Values. Ani's got a new book out titled An Unlikely Social Justice Warrior. It's an important pod, so stay tuned. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
I am feeling very conflicted right now.
All right, do tell.
And I know before we get to that, we need to back up a minute and take care of a couple of housekeeping things.
Yes, we do.
One, there are some really horrific things going on right now that we will address.
Absolutely.
I'm going to start out with something a little light and fun because I think we just need a moment.
Yep.
Secondly, we skipped out on you guys last week.
I wouldn't say skipped out.
Well, we
Maybe
don't.
slid out.
We didn't exactly have a hall pass. Yes. So last week we had our plan set, had our schedule made, and Mother Nature decided that that was not to be the plan. And so probably most of our audience has been impacted by this crazy winter snow, sleet, ice storm that just took over a huge swath of the country. And that forced us to reroute, and travel plans got disrupted. And so we were not able to finish our recording for last week. So therefore we were absent. We apologize. So this episode is running a week late.
Every now and again, Mother Nature rises up to remind us that we're not really
Who's
in charge.
in charge? Absolutely.
Exactly.
But since we skipped out on last week, we come into the episode this week now knowing which two NFL teams are going to the Super Bowl.
Yes, we do know that.
We do. And this brings me to why I am so conflicted.
Okay.
Okay, so the Super Bowl is going to be the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very
And
proud of you.
If my Dallas Cowboys cannot be in it,
Oh, okay.
you know the Seahawks, I'm a fan,
And
right?
why? Why are you such a fan of the Seahawks?
I like their colors. You guys, I'm all about surface level, you guys. So yes, I've been a Seahawks fan for a long time now. I just like their colors. I just think I like their uniforms. Anyways, so they were going to be my team in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Okay, but then I just heard a commentator, frame it in this way.
Okay.
This Super Bowl is Starbucks versus Dunkin'.
Oh my gosh. You're absolutely right.
I know. I know.
Wow.
And if that's the case, I gotta go with Dunkin'.
Yeah, I mean, because Dunkin's kind of it. I mean,
Yeah.
really, yeah.
And Starbucks is this monster, this monolith. I'm not saying we don't go to Starbucks.
Right.
But what I am saying is if I've got to choose on a team, Starbucks v. Dunkin',
Yeah, you got to go with
I gotta go
Dunkin'. You
Dunkin'.
got to go Dunkin'
Oh.
because the world runs on Dunkin'.
That's right. So I've got about a week to figure this out. So this is why I
Wow.
come to the pod today very conflicted in what I'm going to who is going to get my allegiance for the Super Bowl.
Wow. So will you make a big announcement the week of the Super Bowl?
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe next episode we should make an announcement.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
All right.
what
Well,
we're
you do
gonna
your
do.
research and then look at everybody's colors.
That's right.
and make a
That's right.
decision.
So okay, enough of the fun stuff.
Yeah.
What do we get, like 2 minutes?
2 minutes of that, right?
Because we've got to spend some time talking about what's going on and what occurred this last weekend in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Our last episode, I talked in the opening about, in the wake of what had been going on to that point, I talked about trying to microdose joy.
Right.
And I actually had some folks reach out and say
Yeah.
how much they really liked that framing and that, as we're all feeling guilty for looking at anything else that's not just wallowing in this moment and
Right.
trying to and feeling helpless. And
Yeah.
I'm just finding it difficult, to be honest, to even find that microdose of joy right now because people are suffering and it's continuing, and someone else was killed last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our conversation last time we were on the episode, we talked about the killing of Renee Good and all the fallout from that. It was just such a unjust travesty that took place. And I mean, it almost seems like immediately afterwards, here we have this big protest led by clergy last Friday, which was very inspirational. Our senior media producer was up there recording stories.
Right.
A lot of our colleagues were up there. We were out in California, so we couldn't make the trip there. But it was very inspirational seeing the clergy out there, seeing so many citizens from around the country coming to walk and lock arms, protesting this violent strategy on immigration. And then within 24 hours of that protest, news breaks that another citizen has been shot by federal agents.
And of course, then unfortunately see this happen almost in real time,
right?
From several different video angles, from people who were filming, thankfully. So we at least have that evidence. But yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, it was horrible. I mean, we're going to assume that all of our listeners have seen the video footage, but, for those who, know what we're talking about, but of course, we're talking about the killing of Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old ICU nurse at the Veterans Hospital. Just people spoke so fondly of him. So he was out, doing his neighborly duty, making certain that people were safe. And, as the footage indicated, federal agent pushed another citizen down. He went to pick the citizen up and help them up off the ground. And then federal agents kind of descended upon him. And
it was
then
just kind of chaos.
Chaos. And then all of a sudden, as the video footage indicates, Freddie had a weapon legally. He was, licensed there in Minnesota,
Right.
which is legal. One of the officers apparently found the gun. We're not sure if it was in a holster or anything.
Mm-hmm.
All of that leads to the officers opening fire on him, shooting him 10 times, leaving him in the street, and he died of those injuries. Almost immediately, as you've already said, the Department of Homeland Security and the White House try to villainize Preddy, calling him a domestic terrorist, say he showed up to do maximum damage to law enforcement. All was speculation. There was no evidence, no facts to prove those allegations, but they immediately went into spin mode, and it just caused everybody to pause. They've doubled down on that now that they've gotten pushback because of the numerous videos that have surfaced of the shooting. They have toned down the rhetoric a little bit, but as of early this week, they were still trying to perpetuate that they had done nothing wrong and that Preddy was the aggressor in this situation. And that is just not the case. And it's infuriating, Missy. This is what white supremacy does. And this had been going on since the beginning of this country. It started with Native Americans and the humanization of them, and then African slaves. And then, the list goes on. During Jim Crow, Black citizens in the South, and then the LGBTQ community. This is the strategy for white supremacy. Anytime they attack people, they begin to blame the victim, and they will lie in order to do it. And it is infuriating.
Everybody's been talking about this and posting online, and I'm so guilty of just sitting glued to my phone because I don't know why. I guess my response to this is just reading everything and seeing what folks are saying, and what people are seeing on the ground. And one thing that just is becoming clear, we talk about this as being reminiscent of Nazi Germany or
Right.
the Gestapo. And then you see commentary of, no, this is not just that. ICE is the descendant of slave patrols.
Yeah.
The descendant of the indigenous child abductors, the descendant of Jim Crow South, the descendant of all of these things. But here's what I'm wrestling with right now, is that I think all of those things are true.
Right.
There are moments in history that we can apply here in the United States and outside the United States. What's upsetting to me is I think that many white folks, and I'm a white folk, find it easier to say, oh, that's the Gestapo, that's like Nazis, because I don't feel like we all are in collective agreement about our own past and
Yeah.
our own complacency in what has happened in our own country. And that's really bothering me
Mhm.
because like I agree. Like this is reminiscent of things that have already happened
Right.
in our country, that have been happening in our country, and our Black and brown friends are saying, we've been telling you this.
Yeah.
We've been, they are understandably upset. This is what we've been saying all along. And yes, absolutely. And I am mortified and embarrassed at how much I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah.
But now we know. But yet I feel like it's another way to keep us comfortable by just saying, oh, this is reminiscent of Hitler's Germany.
Yeah. You know, I'm so glad that you brought this up because, I mean, as you were sitting there talking, one of my favorite artists and rappers came to mind, and that's Childish Gambino and his song, This Is America.
Right.
I think that's that's the fact that we continue to turn our face against, that we really do need to face the fact that this is America. This is not a Germany problem. This is not a Southern problem. This is an American problem.
Right.
We created it. And we've said this on this show before, and I've written about it before. Everybody says, this isn't America. This is not who we are. That's bull. This is exactly who we are.
Right.
I mean, the United States of America was formed on stolen lands and stolen labor. It went to benefit the most wealthy men that were in power at the time. And it has not stopped since day one.
And then we act surprised when we
Right.
end up in a moment like this. I mean,
Right.
myself included. Like
Yeah.
I said, I am guilty. I didn't fully understand
100%
growing
right.
up. We were taught a very sanitized version of the civil rights movement and of our American history.
Absolutely.
So like you said, and like we've talked about a few weeks ago, of this, this is not who we are. And I think I made a comment in one of our episodes of, well, this is who we are.
Mhm.
We are in this moment and this is who we are. This is not who we were. But then I'm thinking, well, yeah, it kind of is who
Right.
we were.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that to cling to, this is not who we will be.
Right.
And we've got to look at that and
Yeah.
say, what can we do to make this not be going forward?
And these two truths can stand together. Yes, this is who we are. We are a segregated society. We are a white supremacy society. We are an economically unjust society. We can say all those things. Those are true. But here is what is also true. We're also the pastors and citizens of Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
As infuriating, as disheartening, as heartbreaking as the events of last Saturday are, we also see the reaction by friends of ours, such as Travis and Lori Norvell. We see clergy descending on a city. We see people working together. We see 70-year-old men throwing canisters of tear gas back at federal agents because he's so angry about what's happening to his city, and he's fighting back. We're seeing neighbors caring for neighbors. We're seeing them distribute food to one another, caring for one another. That is also who we are.
Right.
And yes, the other truth infuriates us, and it should infuriate us, and we should act out of that fury, seeking justice. But we also have to be inspired by what we're seeing by people who are actually experiencing this atrocity. They are an example for the rest of this country. And I take heart in listening to them, watching them, and letting them lead us through this moment in time that we're in. That is what I grasp hold of. So, you talked about these microdosing of joy. I microdose inspiration from them because they really are an inspiration to me.
And it's such a lesson of, I hope going forward, like you said, we are learning from the city of Minneapolis, from
Yeah.
the state of Minnesota. We are learning how to respond in this moment. They're doing a phenomenal job. And so my hope as I think this is not who we will be,
Yeah.
is that we will not return to complacency.
Right.
Because for those of us with privilege, we've sat a very long time in complacency and in comfort. And that is what has led us here.
Yeah.
As we talk about with democracy, it's not, Sky Perryman, Democracy for It. This is not a spectator sport. It is yours as long as you hold on to it. And I think we're learning a very real and very harsh lesson.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of individuals who continue to fight for justice, you and I last week got to sit down with Ani Zonneveld, who is the founder and executive director of Muslims for Progressive Values. She's got a new book out titled An Unlikely Social Justice Warrior. It's about her life and being a Muslim feminist. She is just absolutely great. And she is another inspiration of someone standing up and fighting for social justice.
She is really one of the coolest people that we know. And I think, and I will admit, this is because that she just embodies something I was never shown growing up or even in my young adult life, but a Muslim feminist, progressive who is fighting for things that are really at the heart of her faith.
Absolutely.
And I admire her so much. Her story, her life is fascinating. Everyone should read this book and follow the organization. They are doing incredible work.
So stay tuned. Missy and I'll be right back with Ani Zonneveld. Good Faith Media is the new home of A Sermon for Every Sunday. This free resource offers lectionary-based video sermons by America's best preachers for use in worship, Bible study, small groups, Sunday school classes, or for individual use. All you do is push the button. With A Sermon for Every Sunday, you can be inspired by and learn from some amazing preachers: Otis Moss III, Amy Butler, Brian McLaren, Starlette Thomas, Will Willimon, Michael Curry, and many, many more. Hundreds and hundreds of free sermons are waiting just for you. You can find them at goodfaithmedia.org or asermonforeverysunday.com. Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got a very special guest with us. Ani Zonneveld is a writer, singer-songwriter, and founder and president of Muslims for Progressive Values. MPV is an international human rights organization that advocates for social justice and equality for all. She is a strong supporter of freedom of expression and of conscience, women's rights, and as an ally, LGBTQ rights. Ani promotes these values at the United Nations by challenging human rights abuses in the name of Islam and by offering an inclusive understanding based on universal human rights and justice. Her newest book, An Unlikely Social Justice Warrior, Making My Life Count as a Muslim Feminist, is currently available. Ani, welcome back to Good Faith Weekly.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Ani, congratulations on the book. It is beautiful. And I'd like to kind of jump off our conversation today by talking about, the title and the book cover, because I know last time we saw you, you told us a really beautiful story about both. So in particular, what it means, the language of using warrior, and also Muslim feminist. Those aren't two terms we often hear in our culture paired together. So give us a little background about the title and also the book cover.
The Warrior came about as a result of me writing about my brother, and how I was in the process of writing the book. I had to pause. Something just took over me, and I paused for a minute. And my brother had passed away. By the end of this month, it'll be 2 years, my oldest brother, and he was sort of my protector. And he had made a painting of me for me that I ended up using for the hardcover. And he called it The Warrior. And it was, and he did this in 1997, long before I started Muslims for Progressive Values, because he always thought of me as a warrior. It's like, well, you may not know this, but the warrior is something also that is very culturally rooted in my Malay tradition. And so he always said, "Oh, Ani, you're the imam." And I'm like, "No, I'm not imam." But, he was always like, he knew what I was about before I knew what I was about. And the painting is actually a depiction of a female warrior in my tradition, and there's a knife a dagger that is at the back, strapped to the back of the woman. And that dagger has a spiritual element in my culture where that dagger is a protector of that warrior only.
Mm.
And it's not to be touched by others. And so there's this whole spiritual component of this dagger that represents the warrior. And so him attaching me as a warrior with that dagger had such an elevated cultural and spiritual meaning to it. So I thought I had to add that word warrior to the title. Um, and in regards to the feminists and the Muslim, I had to put that in because it has been such a challenging two words to put together. And whether it be in the Muslim spaces where they have such a disdain for the word feminist, and for the secular feminist spaces who have such a disdain for religion and Islam in particular. So putting those two together was a way for me to defy both sides and to challenge both sides and to challenge, but at the same time to also bring them together to say we're all working towards the same goals except in our different ways. So get over it and let's start working together. So yeah, that's my way of doing it.
So another interesting, I don't know, thing about this book, I've read other books by Muslim, women, and their stories and their narratives are so very different from yours. You had a very unique upbringing from what I think a lot of us, especially in America, are exposed to. So I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about about your upbringing, how you grew up.
Yeah, my dad was the Malaysian ambassador to Germany, Egypt, and India. So for a total of 16 plus years, I lived abroad, very privileged lifestyle, and um, just the sort of upbringing that is really privileged in the sense that you get to immerse yourself in the different cultures and traditions, and you grow up seeing the world in a very different prism as a result of it. And for me, that is the sort of privilege that is irreplaceable. And it's also because of that that I have a very, very inclusive worldview. A privilege also because my parents were raised me, and particularly my dad, raised all the children, whether boys or girls, in a way that was very empowering. That is, aim for the stars, never compromise. You can do whatever it is that you put your mind to, all of that. So this idea that I'm also reading a lot of memoirs and stories by other authors. And it's when I read books by African Americans, for example, and other minorities, it's staggering for me to learn how they grew up in such a different way than I did. And that for them, it's like they had to overcome this, you're not good enough.
Right.
For me, I was never raised that way. So this not good enough mentality it's just not in my psyche. And that in itself is an empowering way of growing up, of being nurtured. And so when I'm doing my human rights work and I'm looking at how girls and women are being treated, in the most radical areas and particularly in Muslim societies, in the most unfair way and awful, abusive manner, it is my position of privilege why I do the work that I do, right? So it's all connected. I think that when you're raised in such a privileged way, it is your responsibility to then use that privilege to lift up others who are not, and to challenge the status quo, to challenge patriarchy, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's a great lead in because no matter where you lived, whether it was in Egypt or Germany or in Los Angeles, where you currently reside, you kept running up against the patriarchy. And there are numerous stories of your bravery, of you standing up to patriarchy. And you did a great job of explaining that your feminist beliefs, especially in regards to human rights, a lot of times we have to make the same argument, Ani. It's not in spite of our faith that we make this claim of egalitarianism, but it's because of our faith. And you do that beautifully within your book. So share with us a little bit about your passion for fighting the patriarchy as well as an egalitarian way of life.
Yeah, I think that it's really funny because I lived in such a beautiful bubble growing up, where everybody was nice, and I thought, oh, everyone's in the world is nice, right? And then I go to Los Angeles, and I'm in the dog eat dog world of the music and entertainment industry, and it's like really awful. There's no protocol, there's no etiquette, there's no rules of engagement that you stick with. People just are not very nice, let's put it nicely. Yeah, so that was like a real awakening for me, a real shock. And of course, there's a lot of sexism in the music industry, and it's very patriarchal in its structure, it's very hierarchical. And it's also it's all about who you know, not necessarily about merit. And that sort of the same themes keep coming up, whether it be in the music industry, whether it be in the Muslim community, and whether it be in the human rights spaces. And so that was just a constant theme that keep coming up. And obviously at each intersection, I try to challenge them in the best way that I can. In the music industry, it's a beast unto itself, but it's not something that I can change.
Right.
But in the human rights and the Muslim spaces, it is a structure that I can change, and I do that by creating an alternative structure.
Mhm.
And so that's my way of countering the patriarchy and the sexism in the industry, or the sexism in the Muslim society, is by countering it by creating an alternative system. So, for example, marriage in the traditional way is between two men, a man and a woman, and where the woman cannot marry a non-Muslim man, for example. And that actually in the Quran is not true, because in the Quran it says the woman gets to decide who she marries and when and how and all that good stuff. So there's a real freedom for the woman to choose her partner. And yet in the mosque, the imams here in America will not allow for such a marriage without the non-Muslim man converting to Islam. And that is actually not true at all. It's more of a tribal interpretation of Islam. So by creating our own officiant and marriage services, where we conduct interfaith Islamic marriage services, we are creating an alternative pathway for Muslim women who want to marry outside the faith without forcing the non-Muslim to convert, by respecting the non-Muslim tradition, and so on and so forth. So that's just like a snippet of what I talk about in one whole chapter, and the different examples I give of the marriage services
I
that
thought
I've
it was,
done.
I thought it was also, I'm sorry, I thought it was really important because we face the same thing in other faiths. But you talk about, Sharia law, for example, and then other man-made, man-written documents that have basically been codified in faith. But the thing I love about you, and I think it was another imam who told you that you really are a traditionalist. You're probably more conservative than the others who claim to be more conservative because you actually are going back to the Quran and the
Yeah.
teachings of Muhammad.
It was a rabbi friend of mine who
Oh, it's a
said that.
rabbi. That's right. You're right. The rabbi
He
for
says,
the.
Ani said, you should have named the organization Muslims for Traditional Values,
That's what.
because you're going back to the true tradition of Islam. And I thought, yeah, you're kind of right, but yeah.
There are so many of us in the Christian faith, and like you're saying in your instance, and probably in many other faiths, who have been labeled or call ourselves progressive, and we feel the same way. Like, actually, no, we're actually hearkening back to what we feel is the
Yeah.
foundation of our faith tradition. And so I think it's just a really interesting point to make, and a lot of people don't realize, who maybe don't exist in a space and have Muslim friends or even Jewish friends or Hindu friends or whoever, to know that that's out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyways, another issue that is important and associated with your fight is female genital mutilation, or GFM.
Yeah.
But when people think of this, they often, and I do too, you think, oh, it's happening in far off places. You are indicating it's happening closer than we think. So give us a little bit more information about that and how you're fighting for its abolishment.
So FGM, female genital mutilation and cutting, has often been justified in the name of religion, and it's not just in Muslim societies; it's also in the animist communities and Christian societies. So it's actually a cultural tradition regardless of what the culture is, but it has been reframed as a religious mandate, and that's the problem. That's one of the justifications for it. And then here in the United States, about 100 years ago, Kellogg, as in the cornflakes guy,
Right.
Real?
Yeah.
Okay.
was an advocate, was a supporter of FGM. And women and white women, Christian women in America used to have FGM done on them whenever they went into a mental breakdown or into hysteria, or if they were upset about something, they would have their FGM, the FGM done on them, whether it be now what level of FGM, because there's different levels of FGM. There's just the first is just the removing of the skin, like the penis, that the foreskin, and then from there on it becomes even more more violent. So I don't want to get into the visuals and the image because it's really quite awful. And so there's that historical context about FGM here in America. But what else has also happened because of the immigration and the immigrant communities that we have, FGM for a certain time has been practiced under the table. So, for example, it's been done in the doctor's office, or girls were taken what they call the summer cutting trips, and so they would take their daughters to the parents' home country, and they would get cut there and then come back. So the law that we currently have that was signed by Trump incidentally in his first term was to outlaw FGM, and that includes criminalizing parents who take their daughters out to get cut and then come back. So that's also one aspect of curtailing FGM. But what's happening right now in Trump too is that they are proposing an amendment to that law to include FGM in the trans, when the trans have their sex changed, and they're calling that FGM, which is completely different.
Right.
But that's what they're doing. So they're kind of ruining the protection that we have with FGM here in America right now. And so the fight is like here in America. So how do we prevent it? How do we educate parents against it? And how do we educate children about the harms, and so that they can speak up for their own rights, as American-born children or American-based children. And in the international realm, it's still being practiced, and I think there is just not enough money being put into it, or even when they are laws. And this is my argument: you can have laws. I mean, we have laws here about stealing, about murder. People still do it, right?
Right.
And so it's more about how do we change the culture in such a way that there is no this idea of having FGM practice on your daughter is completely eliminated, is a non-issue. It's not even in the psyche of the parents. Now, most of the time it's the women that perpetuate this, right? Because the women believe that, oh, it's you have to exercise FGM on your daughter in order for them to be marriageable. And then what I did was, and I talk about this, which has never been done, and it's the first time I actually write about it. There is I asked these two people that I know in Kenya, can you do this informal research? Like, who do men prefer to have sex with, have intimacy with? Women who have been cut or women who have not been cut? And I knew the answer. And resoundingly, it is women who have not been cut because they're more passionate, they're more sexually aroused, etc. And that also arouses the men's sexual and the desire and the satisfaction of it all, right? And so I'm thinking, well, if men prefer women who are not cut and women are doing it for the sake of pleasing men, then why the hell are we doing this?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So for so many decades, we've been trying to curtail, eliminate FGM, and it has not been successful. It's a whack-a-mole game. And so why don't we try a different approach? But then feminists have a problem with centering men as the voice.
Yeah.
And so, so we've got this stupidity going on at the same time.
Well, Ani, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your social justice work with the LGBTQ community. And I want to, talk a little bit about how your faith guides you in that advocacy. But before I do that, I want you to tell the story about your uncle.
Yes, my uncle was our cook, and he traveled with us in all the different countries that we lived in. And so I've always knew him, but not know him, right? There was always this wall between us. And as a child, you don't, Asian child in particular, we are raised not to challenge authority. And so I've always had that sort of distance between me and him, even though we lived together in the same house or the same space for 16 plus years. And, I noticed that he was feminine, and he was the one that taught me how to dance in our cultural Malay cultural traditions. And, I wrote about how, when he walked, he had the swing in his hips, right? But when he was dancing, the swinging was even more, a more, a more angular, higher degree of swinging, so, and then later I asked my oldest brother, Azahari, say, hey, this is like, after I've lived in the US for some years, I went back to my brother and say, hey, was Uncle Mak Bakar queer? And he was like, oh, and he smiled this big ass smile and said, yeah, he was gay, which explained why there was a bit of a wall between us. And from there, I go into the story of how, it doesn't, what's really important is living your true self and
Yeah.
your true identity, and how God has created you, because without it, you can't really be a happy soul. And a lot of the grievances that you see in this world, the unhappiness is at the core of it, is this lack of ability of living your true self. And because when you're a happy person, you exude happiness, you do good things. And when you're not, when you're insecure, you live out of fear, then the worst of you is what gets manifested.
Yeah.
And the violence on an individual level in family circles and at the family unit, all the way to the societal level, to the political, to the national, it all comes from this ugly, patriarchal structure where no, you have to conform to this way. If not, you are ostracized or you're pariah. And so people, contort themselves into the structure to fit in into this patriarchal structure, hierarchical structure, which doesn't do anyone any good except for that patriarchal structure.
Yeah.
And so my book really talks about all this and connects all these dots. And at the end of the day, it's about what is your purpose in life and how do you contribute to society. And you can't do that until you are truly yourself.
Hmm.
And being truly yourself is a privilege that I have, that some of us have, but for a lot of people in this world, they don't, because it's a sacrifice. So.
Well said.
So, Ani, reading your book and just knowing you for the time that we've known you, one thing we know crystal clear, you promote a pluralistic society respecting religious liberty for all people and separation of church or mosque and synagogue and state. So, talk to us about why these issues are so important to you as a Muslim woman.
So much misunderstanding about what it means to be Muslim, what Islam is, and at the core of Islam, and the reason why I'm still Muslim, is there are so many verses that really spoke to me when I was reassessing whether I wanted to be a Muslim after 9/11, and upon discovering, in my adulthood, and in really analyzing faith and spirituality for yourself, and that's also another privilege, is that holy cow, the Quran is so much more liberating than how I was raised even. And so, the verse of chapter 2 verse 256, there's no compulsion in faith. Basically, God is saying, I don't care if you believe in me or not, and there's no way there's absolutely no permissibility of forcing anyone to convert into any religion or into Islam. And so that's why this whole forced conversion for marriage is so
Yeah.
as is such a bastardization of Islam. And so that's why pluralism, in the way Prophet Muhammad also had covenants with the Christian tribe and the Jewish tribes to protect them, to protect their places of worship, and to protect them till the end of time.
Yeah.
That was the agreement. And then I'm looking at the Muslim majority countries and what the hell? You're not even protecting religious minorities, you know? So these are such gold nuggets within the Muslim community that Muslims don't know. They don't teach us for political reasons. Like, oh no, we have to. We're the third of the Abrahamic faith tradition, so therefore we're better than the rest. This for me, that's a supremacist ideology in the name of Islam. The teaching these pluralism, the values of pluralism, really, I think this is a problem with all religions,
Yeah.
is that it then therefore opens the door to like, then why do I have to be Muslim? Why do I have to be Christian? Why do I? So when for me it is such a beauty in a faith tradition when you teach it and when you live it, and for me I live it. So I think it's not about religion, it's about humanity. And so when it's about humanity, then it doesn't matter what religion you are and how you pray to God. It's about caring for each other, caring for Mother Earth, the animals, and all of God's creation. And that, I think, is what religion is supposed to be about, and which it isn't, obviously.
Very well said. Well, Ani, I want to step away from the book for just a moment because there's some things going on in the United States that we want to get your wisdom on. One of those is obviously you're a proponent of a pluralistic society, religious liberty here in the United States as it's defined. Unfortunately, Islamophobia is still running rampant in the United States, and even recently, in states like Alabama and my home state of Oklahoma, Muslims are being denied the right to build mosques on land that they own. So I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about why do you think, because it seems as though we have made great strides in these areas, but then all of a sudden here it is again, and Muslims are being denied rights that others, certainly, uh, if this was a Christian community in both Alabama and Oklahoma, I don't think they would have been denied the permit to build a church. So tell us a little bit. Is there a reason for this, and how is Muslims for Progressive Values countering this rising tide of Islamophobia that we're seeing right now?
Wow, what a great question. So juicy. Oh, okay. All right. So when you were talking about this right away, I was like, well, that's what Israel's doing to the Palestinian
Yeah,
Christians and Palestinian Muslims and how they've destroyed places of worship. So there's that. But here in America, this sort of xenophobia is actually, it has always been in American societies, and I think it's just been more empowered with the election of Trump. And I get the Trump supporter emails, threatening us.
right.
So that has always been there. Trump has just basically tapped into that
Yeah,
prejudice. And I think the problem with Muslims is that we have not been out there enough one on one with visiting each other's, not places of worship, but each other's homes, inviting people to your home for dinner, for meals. It's that one on one human connection that's missing. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that there has been such a dominant narrative here in America by conservative organization that to be a Muslim means you are X, Y, and Z. Wearing for women wearing hijab. So I write about that in my book too, like how non-Muslims have challenged me about, well, if you're Muslim, why are you not wearing hijab or the headscarf?
right.
And so for some non-Muslims, I'm not Muslim enough. And then,
Yeah,
and for traditional or conservative Muslims, I'm definitely not Muslim enough.
yeah.
So there's that. But I'd like to share with you that Muslims for Progressive Values is a plaintiff in a suit that we're suing the Trump administration.
Hmm.
Nice.
So you're getting first dibs on
Good.
this.
Good. Breaking news.
Breaking news indeed, because the Trump administration's the Religious Liberty Commission
Yeah.
is supposed to it's supposed to consist of a diversity of faith traditions. That's in the bylaws. And it isn't. It's just all Christians and there's one rabbi. And obviously it's a particular mindset
Right.
of faith traditions, so like, Christian and Jewish Zionists, basically, ultra Zionists. And so the suit is Muslims for Progressive Values and a few other folks suing the Trump administration for them not adhering to their own bylaws. So that's the case.
Yeah.
So that's how we're trying to
Good.
counter it.
That is good to hear. And as well, if I could take you and anywhere I go and introduce people to you, you and your presence and your spirit and your wisdom is fighting Islamophobia wherever you go. So as a social justice warrior, keep up the good work, Ani. You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Ani, thank you so much for joining us this week on Good Faith Weekly. We just adore you. We respect and applaud your work. It's just really, really wonderful to see you out there and to hear your wisdom as you spread it. But before we let you go, Ani, we've got one last question that we want to ask you, and Missy has the honor of asking it.
So, Ani, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell?
I am going to be producing a musical theater, and it's called Welcome to My Eid. And it's a way for us to celebrate Eid, which is, our equivalent of Christmas. I mean, that's the importance of it. And in a musical and storytelling narrative where it's not religious, but it's spiritual, and it's welcoming of our non-Muslim family members and non-Muslim members of our society. And it is what I'm hoping it to be is a cultural event that is going to shape how American Muslims celebrate Eid moving forward. And a way for us to also celebrate with our non-Muslim families and members of our society. That's what I'm hoping it'll become. Um, and then, of course, I'm going to be in Arkansas doing my book talk.
Yes.
So I'm super excited about that. It's my first time there. And I actually mention Arkansas in my book.
Yeah, you do, actually. Well, Ani, thank you again for joining us. The book is An Unlikely Social Justice Warrior, Making My Life Count as a Muslim Feminist. It is brilliant. You'll want to pick it up today. Ani, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Mitch, Missy. So good
And
to see you again.
thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us this week. Missy and I will be back next week. And until then, keep living good faith.
You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.